But anyway, let's jump in. Let's start talking about his latest film, Knock at the Cabin, which is an American psychological horror film written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It is based on the book The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul G. Tremblay. The film, Knock at the Cabin, follows a family of 3 who vacations at a remote cabin but suddenly finds themselves held hostage by 4 strangers who demand their family must make a sacrifice in order to avert the apocalypse. Jonathan Groff, Ben Aldridge, and Christian Coy star as the family in distress, while the 4 strangers are played by Dave Bautista, Nikki Amuka-Bird, Abby Quinn, and Rupert Grint. This is the ensemble cast of the film. While there are a few other figures who pop in and out of the film, we are largely following these 7 characters throughout the runtime. This is a very small ensemble cast, and it is a very small film in its location. We are at this cabin for probably 85 to 90% of the film. What I really appreciated about Knock at the Cabin, and let's just start there, what I really liked about this film is the cast. In particular, you've heard so much about Dave Bautista, and Dave Bautista is wonderful in Knock at the Cabin. He is the head of this religious cult, whatever you want to call it. He's the leader who brings these strangers to this cabin to avert the apocalypse. And Bautista is a huge guy. There's no way of getting around that. He is literally massive. His arm is probably bigger than my chest. This guy is just built differently. And yet what I find so interesting about Bautista is he doesn't use his size to portray characters. Not to say that his size can't influence the character, and that's not some points necessary for that character, but it's just quite literally, this guy could just be the muscle in the movie. In Knock at the Cabin, he is quite literally not the muscle. He is the intellectual, he is soft-spoken, he is so charismatic, he is so empathetic, and yet he always feels dangerous. The quieter moments with him, there's the sense of dread because you just look at him and you know he could snap you in half just by his literal physical size. But again, he doesn't rely on that. It is just there and it helps create dread and terror, but it's not what makes him so good as an actor. It is just this emotional vulnerability that he is able to tap into. I've said it before. I think Dave Bautista is probably the best working wrestler turned actor ever. I don't think anyone competes to him. I legitimately think in 10 to 20 years' time, we will see Bautista with a Best Actor award on his mantle. This guy is such a unique treasure. And in Knock at the Cabin, that menace of him is just so real. Every moment of him, he just feels unpredictable. But yet there's an ability for you to just root for this character because it's Bautista. He has this level of charisma that is just unmatched. And it's such an interesting screen presence because he is willing to play down. He is such an actor of a status and stature, literally, that, again, he could be playing a very specific type of character. This character in Knock at the Cabin could have worked as the big, tough guy, kind of imposing his will on this family. But that's not what he is doing. He is so much more quieter. He is so much more relatable in that. And he's just able to achieve everything that this film asked of him. And it's a really impressive performance. And obviously, everyone who's talked about it, I think, has been pretty universal in their praise for Bautista. And I can't go against it. I'm not going to be a contrarian here. He is incredible in this film, and he is really the main draw of this film to watch this film for his performance. But that's not to say that the rest of the cast doesn't come to play. In particular, I think Abby Quinn, Nikki Amuka-Bird, and Ben Aldridge are all wonderful. Quinn and Bird are 2 of the strangers alongside Bautista. They are the 2 females. They each get moments to shine. In particular, Abby Quinn is an actress I am very unfamiliar with, and she really impressed me. Again, it's this charisma that they all have, and it's just this ability for you to just get lost with them. and start siding with them and start putting yourself in their shoes. And there's this dread and horror. And as the film becomes unpredictable, and as these characters' actions become unpredictable, and as the allegiances start getting a little confusing and confound as the stress of the situation continues on, you're with these characters and you feel every emotion that they are there for. Not that you're ever rooting for them necessarily, but you understand why they're there. And it's such an impressive performance. But the guy who really stood out to me was Ben Aldridge. Now, I talked about Ben Aldridge when I reviewed the film, spoiler alert, that came out last year in December with Jim Parsons, and I said Ben Aldridge was really talented. This is another example of Ben Aldridge being very talented, and I think it's also just M. Night Shyamalan knowing how to use Ben Aldridge very well. He has a really just tough guy persona to him. It's a very interesting performance that he is able to channel, where I think it would have been very easy for this character to kind of become one note. He is definitely the tougher. He is definitely the more emotional of the two. He has some past trauma, especially as it connects with the four strangers. And again, I think it would have been easy for this guy to just kind of become a stereotype really easily. Ben Aldridge is able to elevate the material that at times can be weaker and really bring something very special to life. And his relationship, the romance that he has with Jonathan Groff and his connection to his daughter feels very real. And as an actor, I just think Ben Aldridge has really just channeled something special and is really able to just elevate the material that is maybe not up to par as good as he is. Now, let's get into the M. Night Shyamalan-ness of this movie, because obviously this is not a film that he wrote. He adapted this story. This is, if I am correct, the first case of him adapting a story. I might be wrong. The Visit might actually be an adaptation, but I'm not positive. But regardless, Knock at the Cabin, or as it was originally titled, The Cabin at the End of the World, was a very popular novel for 2018. It has some changes in it that are going to be and have proven to be divisive amongst fans. Now, as someone who has never read the book, the changes of it didn't bother me in this movie. But in talking about M. Night Shyamalan's screenplay, I can understand where this book that I read was such an emotional punch. I understand where some people would watch this movie and feel that lack of an emotional punch, because the third act, which I think is built on this gut-wrenching decisions and moments and just action after action, it elevated it worked for me in the sense that the terror, the excitement, the fear, that was all elevated for me, but the actual emotional aspect didn't hit quite as hard as I was expecting it to do. Everyone's very good in their performances, but it just felt like something was missing, and something that I can't identify, but I just felt like I wanted a little bit more in its ending. But what the screenplay does so well, and it's actually what M. Night does so well as a director, is he is able to just keep you guessing. At no point in the film did I feel like I understood what was happening. At no point in the film did I ever feel like I was smarter than the filmmaker and the intent of what the film was going for. I was along for the ride. This film captivated me from beginning to end. And it does such a great job of putting you in the shoes of these characters, where you're just left questioning, would I do this? What would I do in this circumstance? Would I be willing to do this? Could I do that? And then with other characters, you're just left empathizing for them. You're left sitting there like, maybe there's something real to this. And then when the apocalyptic nature of this film starts becoming a little bit more muddled, where you're just left unsure of exactly what's going on, your allegiances change. At one point, you're like, oh, okay, maybe these four guys are onto it. And then the next scene, something disproves it. And then the next scene, you're back to the four strangers. And you're just at every point, you understand all of the ensemble's points. You understand what they are going for. You understand what they believe. And you understand why they are confused at this moment and why they believe what they believe and why they are so steadfast. That's where I thought the screenplay just really elevated the material, where it really left me guessing. Now, The thing that actually, though, impressed me the most about this film was M. Night himself. As a director, I think this is his most technologically impressive film to date. He's a master at camera movement. He just understands how to use the camera to emit terror. And he has a spatial awareness in this film that just creates this feeling of entrapment, which is very key when you're in this singular location. The fact that it never becomes boring or still, the fact that the film just knows when to edit and cut back to the past, which it does do at times. It does have flashbacks in this film. It's just able to do it also masterfully. And it's just this ability of M. Night to just be such a technological director to know the audience needs the break here. The audience needs to be at this level of suspense, and then it needs to calm down and needs to go gradual, or it needs to keep up that momentum. He understands and utilizes that to the max in this film. And that is also an accomplice with everybody else doing their job in the film. In particular, the sound design and the natural lighting, again, just bring this world to life. And I have to just say, Knock at the Cabin kind of floored me. It was a really enjoyable film to watch. Am I going to say it's the best film of this year or it's going to be one of my favorites? I don't think I could get there just yet. But what I will say about this, it's a really good film. It's a really impressive M. Night Shyamalan film. And it's a film that I want to revisit. It's a film that I want to keep watching, keep understanding, keep learning. This really does feel like an auteur making a film and me just wanting to consume that film and learn about that film. That's what I find so impressive. So even the aspects that I don't fully love about this film, some of the emotional tendencies of this film, which I think aren't always there, I give this film credit for making it rewatchable and the fact that I want to rewatch this film and be in this world. Thus, I wanted to call it The Cabin at the End of the World. Thus, Knock at the Cabin really worked for me, and I found this film to be quite a delight, quite a joy to watch. And even if you're not going to maybe love the film or you have reservations about it, I think everybody is going to be kind of in agreement of the performances, especially from Dave Bautista, who, again, is a standout in this film. With that all said, Knock at the Cabin is getting a 3.5 out of 4 stars for me here at the Beneverse.